Hi, welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library. My name is Gina Duvernay, the Adult Services Manager for Gwinnett County Public Library. Thank you all for joining today's program. Today, we are honored to be joined by John Byrne. John Byrne is a writer, broadcaster, performer, and personal advisor to a wide range of international artists. He has, for over 25 years, been resident career advisor to the Stage Media Group, publisher of the world's oldest theatrical and entertainment industry publication. In this role, he has interviewed well over 2,000 actors, directors, producers, and casting directors working on stage and screen. Moderating today's talk is Dr. Nsenga Burton. She is an award-winning writer and entrepreneur. She is the founder and editor-in-chief of the award-winning website, The Burton Wire, a news blog covering news of the African diaspora. Former editor-at-large for The Root, Dr. Burton is an expert on the intersection of race, class, gender, sexuality with film, media, and technology. So Dr. Burton, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having me. All right, John, let's get started. And the last name is Byrne, as in David Byrne, for those who need to know how to pronounce John's name. So first and foremost, let me just tell the readers, if you haven't read the book, it's a really good book. And what I was talking about with John before we started taping is that I love that it's very accessible, it's very short, it's to the point. Now, you're someone who's been in publishing for years. What made you make the decision to keep it so short and to the point and accessible, particularly with the arts, which can sometimes be a little bit complicated or convoluted or what have you when sharing information?
Well, thank you for picking up on that, Doctor. And that was the intention. I think there are lots of ways in which the arts are not accessible, or certainly are made to not feel accessible. I mean, one obvious reason, certainly, and some of the experiences I'll be speaking about will be UK based, but I think they relate to a lot of different places. For instance, certainly in the UK, the majority, if you want to be an actor, for instance, the majority of drama training is very expensive. And there are lots of people who have tremendous talent who are just not going to be able to afford a formal drama education. And I think for that reason, our industry can be quite class bound. It can be quite if you're not in the right clique, if you're not the right color, if you're not in the right circle, it can be much more difficult to access the industry. And for me, I think the most important thing that we can do to change that is make as much of the information as we can accessible to everybody. And I think certainly, if you're talking about, for instance, if you're talking about the subtext of dramas, the things that there are obviously times when you need to dig deeper. But equally, I think I know, Doctor, that you're also involved in business support and entrepreneurship and so on. And I think there's that cliche that there's no business like show business. And the truth of the matter is that show business is just like any other business. And you need to apply the same business principles and resilience and take care of your well-being and mental health and all those things that go together to make you a successful business person. And I think it starts with breaking down the business and getting beyond the jargon and just saying, here are the simple things that you need to do to operate your business correctly and to keep charge of your well-being while you're doing that. And that was the intention. So I'm glad that you felt that it fulfilled that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It met it. And I love that you, even when you start off the book, you talk about, it is a business. And that's something that, as a professor, I've had to teach. Like, I know entertainment is here to entertain. It's supposed to make you happy and go with all the emotions. But ultimately, there's a bottom line. It costs a lot of money, whether you talk about theater, whether you're talking about major motion pictures, whether you're talking about television, whatever kind of medium, social media. It takes a lot of money to create and produce these things. And so ultimately, it is a business. So I really loved that you, started off talking about, acting, you need to treat it as if it's a business. And that really spoke to the entrepreneur in me as well. So when you think about, one of the questions I have for you is what inspired you to write this book. Tell us more about that, because I think we got some of that in your last answer, but can you expound on that a little bit more?
Absolutely. Thank you. I started off in the business as a business person. I started off as a cartoonist. That was my original profession. I come from Ireland, if anybody hasn't guessed already from the accent. But when I started off in Ireland back in the 1980s, my three sons loved to remind me it was before the internet. So Ireland at the time was still quite a small country. I mean, it's still a small country in terms of geography, but it was also a small country in terms of its media reach. And anybody who was Irish who wanted to make a living in the international media had to leave Ireland because there was no internet, there was no other way of accessing. So I would get on a bus, which would take me to a boat, which would travel overnight, which would then arrive in Wales, and then would travel from Wales down to the city of London. And I would get out of the bus and I would go around all the various magazines with my cartoons, try and sell some cartoons, and then get back on the bus and the boat and go back to Ireland. And I did that for weeks. Then I ended up doing cartoons for a comedy magazine in Britain, which kind of dealt with the comedy industry. And then I said, well, maybe I should develop a stand-up comedy act that would involve me drawing cartoons on stage. So I developed that. I think because of its novelty value more than the fact that it was hilarious, I started off at the same time as somebody who is far more successful than me, and deservedly so, in the stand-up. My friend Gina Yashere, I did Gina's first ever show poster, which she told me last year she still has, which I was so pleased to hear. But I began sort of meeting comedians like Gina who were very good at the performing side, and as a cartoonist, I was much better at the joke writing side. So I began not for Gina, because Gina comes up with her own material and nobody else could write material for Gina, but with other comedians, I began writing jokes for them, and then. When you were writing jokes for comedian in Britain in the 1980s, you de facto became their manager. So became their manager, and that got me into the general area of performance show business. And to come to the end of answering that question in a very long-winded Irish way, having been in the business for the last 25, 30 years, as people who have been reading the news or people who are involved in the business themselves will know, over the last 3 or 4 years, it's become particularly difficult. I think it's much more challenging because of, first of all, COVID and lockdowns. That didn't help in terms of the industry because of all the shows closing down and productions. Then the strikes, which of course I absolutely support in terms of workers' rights, but because of the strikes, production closed down on both sides of the Atlantic. So it meant that for actors who have always been out of work more often than they were in work, that became absolutely multiplied over the last couple of years. And I was just meeting lots of actors who were despondent and losing hope and just not knowing what to do with themselves while they were waiting for things to improve. And you said something in an earlier statement, which I think that's always been the case, as anybody who's freelance in the acting or entertainment business knows. But I think social media has, in some ways, made that more pointed, because, as one actor said to me, when I look at social media, every other actor is working except me, because it gives us this very skewed perspective on how things are going. So really, the motivation for the book was to say, no, let's be real about this. Let's be real about the fact that every actor is probably going to spend more time out of employed acting work than they are in acting work. And let's, rather than letting that make me depressed, or rather than letting that make me feel like giving up, let's see what we can do with that time. I called it the always working actor, because I think if you're an actor or any creative person who only relies on other people to give you employment, then you won't be always working. If you're an actor who, in some ways, or a writer or a creator who can take control of what you're doing and produce your own material and run your own career, and include that along with somebody else giving you work from time to time, that will give you much more of a sense of well-being and actually moving forward. And that was the motivation for the book.
Very good. Yeah. And your book, it's like each chapter addresses one way that you can do something in order to improve your situation while you're waiting for work or while you're preparing for work or you're in between jobs or what have you. And I really love that. And I love that you give prompts at the end of each chapter. So if you when you all buy this book, it'll say, clear the clutter or what have you. I think that's what a name of the chapter or something like that. And then it'll give you a prompt of what that looks like, right? You give people exercises. How did you decide to do that? Because I think that's just something you don't see often. And this book is not only, I think it crosses categories, but that comes into that kind of self-help space where you give people prompts and exercises and things to do. Like you not only talk about it, but then you're like, okay, try this. What made you set up or structure your book in that way?
Well, one thing that because when I thought of doing the book, it was I really felt it was time that that kind of book was needed at that time. But I also felt that there's a stereotype about an actor who's out of work, and when I say out of work, what I mean is not not casting for something at the moment or not auditioning. Um, and one stereotype is maybe they're not auditioning because they're not very good, and that's absolutely not true. You know, it's a very competitive industry. There are so many people in the industry that even when the industry is riding high, there will always be more actors waiting for castings than actors getting them. And I think, as I say, social media sometimes makes actors doubt themselves when actually it's
Yeah.
just a supply and demand thing in a very narrow market.
Yeah.
And then the second thing, there's also a stereotype of actors who are not in work, and they are, well, in the old days they would wait by the phone for their agent to ring. But basically that idea that an actor's not in work, therefore what they have to do is wait for the phone to ring. So I wanted to get away from that. But then I was also really conscious that yes, there may well be some actors who, when they're not in acting work, can wait for the phone to ring and so on. But there are many talented I meet so many talented people who maybe started off with the dream of being an actor, but they're a mom, or they're, they work three jobs, so where have they got time? So as well as those little prompt ideas, that every day you could do something that would help you to feel that you're in control of your career and making choices and moving it forward. I
Hmm.
also wanted most of them to be things that you could do even if you're, if you're juggling your kids or your day job or your
Yes.
your night school. So you could take a little action every day, and then in some cases you can complete the action on the day. In some cases, you could say, "This week my goal is that by the end of the week I will have cleared the clutter, and I will have made a physical space for my acting career." That will then help me create kind of that creative space and so on. So yes, it was very much about little practical things we could do. I did something when as a lot of authors do, in terms of my research, I said, right, before I write this book, let me just check what's out there in terms of what to do when actors are out of work. And almost everything I could find online or in book form was all about sign up to an acting course, sign up to, and,
Yeah.
and those things are great to do. But if you're already out of work or in your actor day job, which often doesn't pay much, you don't really have the space to pay for somebody's $900 masterclass at this moment. So it's what can you do in the meantime?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Now, as writers, I think when we talk about it doesn't matter who you talk to. If you talk to someone who's the editor of a publication, you talk to someone who's a screenwriter, you talk to someone who's a poet, whatever type of writing someone is doing, if you ask them for the advice, like what you should be doing every single day, they're like writing, right? So as an actor, and you have given them all of these different things that they could be doing every day,
Mhm.
what would you say? Like, what should actors, whether they're working or not working, but particularly if they're in between jobs, what should they be doing every single day? Maybe the top three things that they should be doing every single day to either, improve the craft or improve their mental state or what have you.
I
What's
think
your,
that's I'm really glad you've asked that question because, as I said, I started off first of all as a visual artist, as a cartoonist. So what I can do as a cartoonist is I can sit down every day and I can doodle and draw cartoons. As a writer, with pen and paper or your laptop or your tablet, you can sit down and write. And I think most writers understand that, and none of us are perfect, but we all try and do it as much as we can. Um, I I felt like for an actor, it's slightly different because it's almost like I think we feel as actors that if we don't have an audience, if somebody is not sort of asking us to do this, then we somehow feel embarrassed about doing it. And I tried to find ways that actors could do it, so they actually practicing their technique and their skills, but in ways that are interesting for them and challenging for them, that maybe would also help them not just practice but discover new things. So, for instance, I think every actor knows that they should be practicing their vocal exercises. They should be practicing their movement exercises. If you are in a drama course, it's much easier because you have a tutor who's telling you to try this, do this, play this role, play this game. When you're an actor on your own, and you're not in that kind of structured space, it can be much more difficult. So I just came up with ideas like, watch a cartoon on TV, turn down the volume, and do the voices just as a bit of vocal practice and so on. So again, little things that an actor may say, I've practiced the monologue that I use for auditions over and over and over and over again, and at the moment, because I'm not getting castings, I'm getting tired of practicing that same monologue. And I suppose there's two things. I actually use that for two exercises. The first one is, um, because I speak to actors who are in long running shows and they're performing the same script every night. But as you would know, the most important thing is for them to find something new in that script. I mentioned that
Yes.
I've had the privilege of interviewing some very successful and well-known singers, for instance, over the course of my journalistic career. And I remember asking a very good friend of mine, a lady called Sheila Ferguson from Philadelphia, who was the lead singer of the Three Degrees. And they had that famous song, "When Will I See You Again?"
Yes,
which
yes.
we all love, which we all hear all the time, and which my friend Sheila performs live, I would say, even better than back in the 70s. And I once asked her, I said, well, Sheila, how do you sing that same song with the same lyrics every night and still make it sound like it's the first time? And she said, because every time I sing it, I find a different memory or a different feeling to associate it with it. So even though I've sung it probably a million times now, every time I sing it, it's new and fresh. And so one of my prompts, I've encouraged actors to try and find those things. Take a monologue that you're used to performing, but really try and perform it like it's the first time you've ever done it, and see what you can find in it. And it's just interesting with that little mindset change. It can You can look at your monologue or discover new facets to your acting ability. And then a similar one is, if you haven't been given a monologue to audition with recently, pick a song that you like, but deliver the song as a monologue, and treat it like a script, and try and sort of communicate the feelings, in that sort of song lyric in written form. And that can work really well. Either you can take a serious and deep song that you like, and sometimes you can take a song that is serious and deep, but perform it in a comedic way, which also can sometimes give you a little bit of video you can use on your social media and so on. So it was those kind of little ideas to make the practice that we all should do, but make it more entertaining for the actor, where it will hopefully make it more entertaining for their audiences when they do eventually get into their next role.
Yeah, I was thinking about, oops. I was thinking about when you said that you two's with or without you. Like that would be a good monologue. But okay, so
Absolutely.
yeah. When you just said that, I was like, that would be a good monologue. And those are like the very tactile types of suggestions that you've made throughout the book that I think are really, really good. One of the things that you talked about in the book also was um, thinking about the ways in which people approach acting, like, because there are different acting styles that people can use. Do you think it's a good idea for people to try out new acting styles or to kind of commit to one of them? Like, what are your thinking on that? Because I know it differs for a lot of people.
I think I said it in the book. One of the things that there are very few guarantees in a creative career. That's that, and anybody who tells you they're a guarantee, I always say, if they're if they're offering to represent you or take money off you because they're guaranteeing things, run a mile, because there are no guarantees. But the only thing I can guarantee is when you announce to the world, whether you're a young person starting out, whether you're somebody who's always wanted to get into a creative profession like acting or writing, and you do it later in life, or whether you're an older person who maybe has taken time out and is coming back in, the one thing I will guarantee you is as soon as you declare that you wish to be a creative person, what you'll get is lots and lots and lots of advice from everybody. And you'll find that some of the advice is terrible. Some of the advice is very good, but often you get two pieces of advice that are really good pieces of advice, but you can't do both at the same time. So you've got to
Right.
make your own choices. And I think it's
Right.
similar with styles. The more styles that you experiment with, the more you'll find the ones that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the things that we is important for all of us, because I was when I heard that you were hosting this session, I was so honored, because I know your own background in so many areas of the business. But I also took a look at the Burton file. There's a YouTube video,
Mm-hmm.
and I clicked one of the videos. I'm sure there are many, but I clicked one, and I found myself looking at the beautiful face of Cicely Tyson, the late Cicely Tyson, who I've always really admired as a performer. But also, I love saying this: we have the same birthday, not the same year, but we're the 19th of December. So I share my birthday with Cicely Tyson, and also the great French singer Edith Piaf. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it was an auspicious date for at least two of those people. I do my best not to embarrass them, but I know with Cicely Tyson, for instance, I read her autobiography, and it was very much about how she started off in modeling and didn't really, well, she started off in I think stenography actually, and then in modeling. And then
Yes.
it was only because somebody met her and suggested that she should actually went into the movie Sounder, and then her career took off, and she's been. But also right up, and I know you mentioned this in one of your articles. So right up until the end of her life, she was in How to Get Away with Murder, an amazing performance.
Yes.
Um, and her career, spanned years and years, rather than just that 15 minutes of fame. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's really what we all want to aim for. We all want to aim for a career that lasts for a long time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and over the course of that career, I think one of the things that I really admired about Miss Tyson is when they originally suggested she should be a model, she didn't think she qualified because she felt she was too dark skinned, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But she did it, and she conquered that world. And
Yeah.
then when somebody suggested she would be good as an actress, I think she mentions that I think she turned down the script 3 or 4 times, not because she didn't feel that the script was good, but because she didn't feel she was good enough for the script.
Yes.
And I think one of the secrets for all of us in creativity, of longevity, is to keep pushing outside our comfort zone. So
Mm-hmm.
if we have one style that we're comfortable with, that's great. But I think we should challenge ourselves to try other ways of doing it. And if they work, they work, and then they add to our repertoire. And if they don't, well, we tried them. So I think that's why trying different styles, I think, is good for all of us in every creative profession.
Yeah, that's a great example. Cicely Tyson is amazing. Her work is just outstanding. Who else do you who else do you think has a good a career that should be modeled? Like who are you watching? Like who are your favorite actors?
My favorite actors are, I mean, one I mentioned in the book, and has unfortunately passed away, is the great Christopher Reeve, who people know as Superman. And in
Yes.
fact, my friends at the Reeve Foundation, who are the charity that Christopher Reeve and his wife and his family now run for people
Hmm.
with disabilities, they've just released a movie, I think, in the last week or so, which is called Super slash man, and it looks at Christopher Reeve as the Superman actor, but also his human story,
Right.
and how he became an advocate after his. It's a great movie. But I'm really glad also that it because the thing about when you play there's lots of superhero characters at the moment, but um, that can be played in a very stereotypical way, or it can be played. I mean, he approached it as if it was Hamlet or any other sort of important iconic role. And there's that classic scene that I reference in the book that you see a lot on video now, where everybody always said about Superman, how does nobody know that this guy is Superman because he just wears glasses? But when you see Christopher Reeve as Superman, and then how he has a whole different physicality as Clark Kent, and you see that change, you think, you know what, I actually believe, not only do I believe a man can fly, but I actually believe that people might not know this guy is the same person. That's great acting. Someone like Viola Davis is an amazing actress because, but
Yes.
for two reasons, because she plays all these different characters, whether it's Annalise or other characters. But then when you go to her Instagram or you see her speak, she's not like any of the characters she plays, and that's acting. I love my favorite show at the moment, Abbott Elementary, because it's wonderfully written. Also because it's ensemble. So seeing these actors, I mean, you've got Shirley Ralph in there, you've got Lisa Walter, you've got Quinta Brunson, you've got
Yeah.
incredible actors. But the fact that they also work together as an ensemble, that's a skill as well. I once, because I work with performers and coach them, I once coached somebody who was starting off in their singing career. And like a lot of singers, they started off doing backing vocals. And I asked, I said, how did the backing vocal gig go? And she said, oh, I got sacked. And I don't understand why I got sacked, because I gave my best performance. I outsung the lead singer. And I said, well, I think that is probably the reason why they don't want you back, because my friend had an amazing voice and has an amazing voice, but in that particular role, her role was to be the backing support as opposed to outsing the lead singer. Yeah, but when great actors can work together as an ensemble and there's that kind of sharing and so on, that's something that I really admire.
Yeah, so talk a little bit more about that too, because in the book, I think you do great job of giving people individual things to do, but what should people
Mhm.
be doing with their colleagues or network, or how can they expand, how should they be expanding their network, during their kind of, I hate the term downtime because you really don't have downtime as an actor. You're always, if you're not working, you're preparing, like you're studying, you're doing, but when they're in between gigs, so to speak.
Okay.
What can they do in an ensemble or in a collaborative type of way
Well,
to
I think the first thing they can do is they can be open to collaboration. I think I mentioned in the past that social media can be a negative thing, in that people can look at it and they can compare they compare their backstage to other people's headlines and so on, and that can be, we all can do that, and it can make us feel unenthusiastic and a little bit down. So I think there's that side of social media, but equally, social media has given us the ability to reach out to other people. Um, I'm very wary of kind of networking, which is about, I do something for you, which means you have to do something for me. And I think a lot of people approach
transactional
networking in the wrong way. Um,
transactional
yeah,
networking. Mhm.
actually, just I think a way that actors can open themselves up to connections that then can lead to collaborations is just support people. Don't support people because you feel if you support them they'll do something for you. Support people you actually like and whose work connects with you, but support them because you like it and their work connects with you, not necessarily because you might get something back. And it's just surprising once you start that, how many connections you make. I mean, you asked me earlier on about actors I admire. Um, Other people I admire at the moment, and people like Issa Rae, Ava DuVernay, and the Array organization, people who use their platforms to create work for other actors and performers, and build that community. And I think it's very important, because the our industry, um, it can be it can be very competitive, but part of that is because of the power structures in the industry, where it it tries to convince us that it's competitive, which then stops us communicating with each other and supporting each other, and then makes the industry and the gatekeepers the conduits to reaching our audience. And actually, we can help each other reach audiences. And if I'm helping somebody whose work aligns with what I'm doing, there's a good chance that their audience will also be interested in what I'm doing. So I think definitely, there's lots that actors can do in terms of collaboration, but even before collaboration, build relationships, support people. Let's all help each other. It it sounds like almost like counterintuitive in a business where I must stand out and it's all about me, my brand. But I promise you, I've seen
Right.
it work so many times for people. It helps, and also acting, creativity can be a very lonely profession. So it's the community that will keep you going.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a comment in the chat, and I think I'm going to form it into a question. What about people who are, immigrants, and who are working on their English, who are interested in acting? I mean, Sidney Poitier talked about that. He was
Mhm.
Bahamian, and he had an accent when he first came here, a stronger accent, that eventually he trained himself to kind of go in
Mhm.
and out of as needed. But can you talk about, when you're an immigrant, whether it's the UK or here in the United States or
Mhm.
whatever, what are some of the roles you can go after while you're still learning the language of the place where you are wanting to work?
Okay, and that's a very good question. I think first thing I would say is that I'll speak for Britain probably more than the USA in this instance because that's where my main experience is. Is I think it's fair to say that in British media in general, there's some movement. So I'll take myself as an example. As an immigrant from Ireland, um, when I began performing, the main roles that I would have been offered are terrorist, because back then it was the Northern Ireland situation. So I would have got
Yes.
terrorist really easily.
Yeah.
I would have got priest because lots of programs had Irish Catholic priests in them.
Yep.
Then, if I was in the 80s, I would probably have got a gay man from Ireland who wasn't able to come out in Ireland, but because they're now in a British soap, they can come out and their family in Ireland would be, and that kind of thing. And then as Ireland became more progressive in that area, probably around the 90s in Britain, Irish people began to get cast in parts, as in the doctor, he's a doctor, he happens to be Irish, or she's a businesswoman, she happens to be Irish, but the whole plot wasn't around their being Irish. And I think things have been progressing. They're not anywhere near where they need to be. I think
Mhm.
the reason that they're not anywhere where they need to be is quite often, even in those shows that are more diverse in terms of representation,
Mhm.
a lot of that diversity is in the cast on screen, which is a good thing, but we haven't reached the level of diversity in the people writing and producing and show running, which is a whole other conversation. Um,
Absolutely.
but the point that I would make, I think, is that I think um, if we limit ourselves to the roles, whatever our background, if we limit ourselves to the roles that only come through us from casting, I think we may never get. In fact, there are some singers in musical theatre singers in the UK who come from a wide range of diverse backgrounds and countries and are immigrants, and they put on a regular musical theatre show called Parts We'll Never Get to Play, where they take all the shows that they feel they won't get cast in and wonderfully perform the songs and so on as a demonstration that given the opportunity they absolutely can perform those roles. I think if as actors we limit ourselves to the jobs that people give us, I think we will always find barriers and we'll always be subject to people's judgment. If we find ways I'm thinking of a friend of mine who has a disability. So she's a lifelong user of crutches to walk around the place. And she found very much that she was limited in roles because people's strange perception of, oh, that character, because they use crutches, wouldn't necessarily be our lead actress and so on. So she started producing her own work, basically playing the roles that she wanted to play, playing them using her crutches, and then having done that and got out there, started to find she was being offered roles by people who'd seen her perform these roles and realized they needed to look beyond their preconceptions. So I would never say that it's easy, but what I would say is don't limit yourself just to the roles that you're giving through the casting process.
Okay, okay, cool. So, I think that's really good information. Because when you were talking about that, I was also thinking about, and you were talking about the roles that you would have played in this
Yes,
different time periods. Sometimes you have to play those roles in order to get to where you need to
abs
go.
absolutely,
And so,
absolutely.
we have Stuart Hall, the late
Yes,
great British of
yes,
Jamaican descent
yes,
scholar would say you have a negotiated relationship with the
absolutely,
particular text, right? And that's when you are aware that like I'm being typecast because I'm Irish. I know for a fact I'm going to
absolutely.
play gangster, I'm going to play this, I'm going to play that, or
Hmm.
whatever. But because I'm an actor, I can play those roles well, and hopefully, I will either be have the opportunity to play something different, or I will be able to take what I'm earning and create those roles, better roles, or different types of roles from the
Absolutely.
show. So I love that you said that. Like, sometimes you do have to take control, and that's also throughout your entire book. One of the things that I think is really important, and I'd love for you to talk about is this, and it comes out of this last part of this discussion, is the importance of having a reel, and improving on that reel. You talked
Hmm.
about that. You talked about being on LinkedIn and why that's important for actors, even though we don't
Absolutely.
intuitively think about it in that way. But can you talk about even how you could use your reel perhaps as a solution for this particular question? And why reels are important in general for actors and people who are in the industry.
We are in a very visual. I mean, we're in the TikTok generation and so on. So basically, everybody likes to see video and hear audio. And I'm glad that because um, the stage is it's 144 years old, I think, this year. So when I first began working for the stage back in the late 80s, early 90s, um, there were, as with Variety and Backstage and other trade press, there were ads in the back, services for actors. And I remember one service in the 1990s that was in the back of the stage was, if you're an actor who needs a reel, we will make a reel for you. And at the time in the 90s, that seemed like something. Why would anybody pay to make a reel when the only people that have reels are people that have done, in inverted commas, proper acting work? People who've been in BBC shows or ITV shows. This is because it just seemed like such an egotistical thing to make a reel. 20 or 30 years later, as you say, everybody needs a reel, and you don't have to wait till you're casting something because people need to see what you look like on screen. They need to see how you interact with other actors. And the other thing is that it's maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, you had to go to a company and pay them to make the reel for you. With smartphone technology, most people on their current phone can make a reel that will definitely work for them. And also, I'm always worried about how I phrase this, but maybe one possible thing that was a benefit from our collective lockdown experience is that we would never be having this wonderful conversation because I would have had to fly to Atlanta, which I would absolutely love to do. I was there for a very short time, and I do want to come back. Or you would have had to fly over to me in the UK, but now we can speak, and other people can listen to us. And similarly, I think. People are interested in seeing how an actor looks and sounds on video. They don't need, and again, I would advise actors to be quite wary of people who sell you reel making services based on the fact that they have the top equipment. You don't need the top equipment. You just need to be seen clearly and sound clear and show off your acting skills. So I think definitely in your reels, you can demonstrate your range. You can play some of the roles that, as you said, you may have to play at the beginning of your career, but equally you can show a little bit of range as well. And I think for all of us as actors, we then have the possibility, with whether our platform is TikTok or Instagram or
That's right.
Threads or wherever it is, you can send your reel out there. You just never know who will see that reel. You never know, because you, doing what we said before, because you've been liking and interacting with another artist, you never know which of their friend producers, actors may see your reel and go, "Hey, that I'm looking for someone to play that character in this little short piece I've written," or so on. So it's
Mhm.
a reel is a great way to not wait to show what you can do, but get what you can do out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And another point you made in the book about the reel also is highlighting other skills that you have. So like, if you, I think you use basketball or something as the
Yes.
example. But I thought about like cooking or, like water for chocolate. I really thought that they were chefs because their technique was really good. But like
Yes.
some people are doing they have so many different skill sets that they don't really think of, but that could work if somebody's casting for someone who's going to play a basketball player or play a chef or or whatever.
Absolutely. I mean, a really good example of that is, and it relates to stereotyping. I work with an actor who, so if if you want somebody to play the part of a bodyguard or sort of a violent thug, he would be the person that would be cast because that's he's got a shaven head, well, not that I can talk much about that, but he's got way more muscles than I have. He's got tattoos. He's the stereotypical that kind of actor. He's
Right.
also the dad of two beautiful young children, and his hobby is cooking. So a casting came in for somebody who's an excellent cook who doesn't look like what people associate a cook to be. And of course, he got the role because he had these two aspects to him that other people couldn't necessarily combine. And I always say that not just in your acting, but in your writing, in your creativity, when you can put together two things that their intersection is unusual, that gives you something that at some point people will want those two skills together, and you will be one of the few people who have those two skills together.
David Bautista comes to mind when you said that.
Yeah.
He's always cast as well, either he in earlier, like with the way that he looks, in terms of being an enforcer,
Mhm.
sort of.
Yes.
But now he's getting that kind of those roles that are the opposite of how he looks, and so, yeah, you never know where that skill set can send you. Another thing, and this is our last question because I want to give people a chance to ask questions if they are inclined to do so. You mentioned in the book, which I thought was fantastic, in the current climate in which we are operating. You talked about safety. And even when we were talking about the reels, I thought about that. Like if you go and somebody's like, we'll make a reel for you. How
Hmm.
you just have to be so you have to have discernment and really figure out if you are going to pay somebody who's going to make a reel for you,
Absolutely.
that they're legitimate or they're not looking for transactional types of experiences.
Absolutely.
But you talked about safety and being an actor, and we all have heard the term the casting couch. That's been
Hmm.
around since the turn of the last century.
Absolutely.
We've all heard and seen, all of these stories related to all of these
Hmm.
industry executives and leaders and trailblazers, being learning that they were
Hmm.
practicing in illegal and salacious and abusive
Hmm.
and violent and criminal behavior. So when I saw that, I was really happy to see that you addressed that. Can you address that directly
Absolutely.
here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm very happy to say that I'm a co-director with my wife Lola of a British talent agency called New Wonder Management, and we represent, as well as actors and directors, we represent intimacy coordinators, who are the people who are now, as part of crew, are there to support actors in their boundaries and intimate scenes. So that's definitely a useful development, that intimacy coordinators are now part of crews. But obviously, sort of what used to happen, it's like a lot of injustices in the world. They used to happen. Now, because of social media, because of reporting, because of mobile phones with cameras, we all have become more aware of the injustices that happen, but that doesn't mean they still don't happen. And one of the reasons that I think, unfortunately, they happen or can happen in our industry is because of this suggestion that the only way I can express my talent to the world is through these conduits of producers or powerful people in the industry. So I think the more that we can be in charge of our own career and feel that our own destiny is something that we're in control of, the temptation is less to give in to suggestions which are not within our boundaries or our comfort zone. What I think is really important to say, and I've been quite rightly pulled up on this in other discussions that I've had, is I think all of us who work in the industry, I hope at least all of us would say that it's very important that you as an actor or as a creative don't do something that, you know, is not something that you consent to further your career. The industry is it's such a powerful industry, and it's so kind of systemized in terms of its sexism and its racism and so on. I wouldn't want for a second anybody who has in the past found themselves in those situations to feel in any way that it was their fault. It wasn't. It wasn't their poor judgment. People take advantage, and the wrong is on them. It's not on the people who've been victimized. And I think that's really important to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what I would say is that I would hope that many more productions would have intimacy people on board to safeguard that. But I think I said in the book, it's really, in a general sense, it's really good to just apply exactly the same principles you would apply on a blind date to a casting. Don't go to somewhere that you know is not professional. Don't go to a casting in somebody's house. Don't go to a casting, you know, in some address that you don't know. Make sure you tell people where you're going. Don't always have your phone on you and have it switched on. Have a friend who knows where you're going. Yeah, and if you need to bring the friend with you, bring the friend with you.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't want you bringing the friend to the audition, well, that's a red flag, and so on. So I think it's applying sort of those basic rules and so on. But I think it's also for all of us as an industry who have integrity to keep working to make the industry a safer place, to keep having those kind of guidelines in there, to report not just when something happens to us, because that can be very difficult, but to encourage and support our friends who have been mistreated to report, and then to make sure there's accountability. And I think it's something that will change, and I hope get better. But it's still an issue, and we do need to be very wary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. So we are speaking with John Byrne, author of The Always Working Actor, 101 Ways to Stay Inspired, Prepared, and Motivated Between Jobs. So we have a question in the chat.
I just want to say, John, you have been you've given us a wealth of information. You've been absolutely just lovely, amazing.
Thank you so
And
much.
of course, Dr. Burton, you are just a moderating pro. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. There is one question in the Q&A box, and it says, how to find a mentor if you don't have a drama education?
Okay. So I think I think there's a couple of ways. I think just making those connections can certainly help. I've meant, I mean, in addition to my work as an actor's agent and an advisor and a manager, I've mentored one or two performers over the years, and how I've mentored them is initially they may have approached me with a question. You know, how do I do this? I'm interested in this role. How do I approach the casting director? And I would give them some advice. And then maybe 3 months later, I get an email saying, John, thank you for the advice you gave me. I tried the advice. It worked. Thank you very much. Or it didn't work. And then I would reply and say, it's wonderful that it worked. I look forward to seeing your movie or your show. Or if it didn't work, maybe we can try this one. And then 6 months later, again. So I think with mentors, it's often about building a relationship. You want someone to mentor you, and I think, Doctor, you'd probably agree with this, in business as well. You want somebody who is achieving in their chosen in the area that you want to achieve in, and if they are achieving in the area you want to achieve in, then the chances are they're going to be busy. So you need to value that mentor's time. You
Yes.
need to not come to them with a question that you could have Googled. You know, you need
Mm-hmm.
to do that work, but research the person you would like to mentor. You know, when you ask them a question, make sure the question is one that they can build on your existing knowledge, not that they have to sort of start you off from something you could have discovered yourself. And then just keep the conversation. Once we start mentoring, and I know, Doctor, I'm sure that you've mentored people.
Mm-hmm.
When we mentor people, we take an interest in them. So if your mentor suggests something and it's working, let them know.
Yes.
You know, we like to know these things. And if it's not working, but you tried it sincerely, let them know. You know, because I think a mentor who is a valuable mentor doesn't present themselves as some all-knowing guru. We've learned some things in our journey, and we want to share it with other people. And we know that not everything that we suggest is going to work, but we like to sort of be part of a person's development and growth and so on. So, and
Yeah.
without sounding like what's the Kevin Costner movie? If you're supporting online or in person the people that you feel to support, your mentor will arrive, and when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
one other thing I would say is that, and it almost takes us back to one of our interactions at the beginning of this discussion, is that um, the um, the mentor you need might not be an acting mentor. Yeah, you may
Hmm.
have already got the skills or learned the skills. Maybe it's a business mentor, maybe it's a marketing mentor, maybe it's a social media mentor, maybe it's a production mentor. So as you develop your skills, you'll start to see the gaps for the mentors that you actually need.
Yeah, and don't take things, and this is me, I just piggybacking on what John was saying. Don't take things personally. You might approach somebody, you don't know what's going on in their lives. They might have 20 billion things going on personally. They might be going through divorce. They might have had a death. It has nothing to do with you when someone says, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. Just keep moving. Do not take it
Absolutely.
personally. Just move on to the next person that you're interested in. Make sure you put yourself in places where people that you want to mentor are.
Absolutely.
And be realistic, if you want a mentor, Viola Davis is probably not going to be your mentor right now, especially where she is in her career. But there is a local actor right now who's probably working all over the world, who's probably flying between here, LA, New York, Chicago, Toronto, all the places, London, who would be a great mentor, that might be a character actor, right? And so you just have to, I think, manage your expectations too. Like sometimes you are privileged enough to meet these people who are just like amazing and doing great work and they're iconic and they're going to be legends and all of that. But a lot of times you're going to be surrounded by people who are working actors who are also will be able to help mentor you and will be able to tell you how to get jobs and who's auditioning and who's casting and all of those things as well. So don't discount people because they haven't achieved international stardom or fame. I say
I
that.
think that I'm so glad you said that because with all due respect to Viola Davis, who I'm sure is busy, so please nobody start tweeting Viola Davis and saying that Dr. Burton
Not
and
at
I said you
all.
should contact
Yes,
her.
yes,
But
yes.
the thing about the truth of the matter is that Viola Davis is a wonderfully talented actor who's worked, but her career has spanned several decades. So actually,
Yes.
the area the time she started her career is different from the time we're in now. So not only will that A-list person not have time, no matter how nice they are or caring they are, but actually how they built their career will be different from now. So I love the fact that I always say to actors, um, pick an actor who is maybe one step or two steps ahead of you in your career. Somebody, because if the person is 20 steps ahead, it's
Yes.
too many steps. If the person
Yes.
is one or two steps, they can mentor you to take those steps. And the steps are doable for you and will actually be the ones that will move you forward.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a wonderful point you've made.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and that we have with our students. When we talk to our students, like, you can have a mentor who's at the executive level, but you can also have one who's at a manager level in business, right? We talk about the business of the industry, and you have somebody who just started out and they got out of college 3 years ago, and you're just getting out of college. That's probably the best person, to
And
have,
and
right? Because
absolutely, I was going to, and the other thing is that that person who's building their career is going to be so honored and going to be so that you're respecting and celebrating what they've achieved by asking them to mentor you. So the chances are that that mentorship relationship is a much easier one to create. But as we've said already, always do it sincerely. It's not because of
absolutely.
what they can do; it's what you can do for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else you'd like to add that I didn't ask you, John? You were phenomenal. I loved having this conversation and I'd love to continue it another time. But is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, only what you just said. I think we could speak for a long time, but I think what I love is that we've both come to it based on that interaction between, that there's the acting side, the creative side, and the business side. And I think the final thing I would say is, and I hope you would agree with me also, is that sometimes when I speak to creatives, be they writers, actors, it's almost like they see the business side as bad, And I think it's true that the truth is that whether it's publishing, whether it's broadcasting, whether it's film, TV, there have been lots of cases where the big interests, the movers and shakers, the gatekeepers have exploited the talent. And that's something that obviously the more that we support each other as creatives, the more we can try and change that. But that doesn't mean that the concept of applying business to acting is wrong. In fact, it's the opposite. The more that actors learn to control their own business, the less chance of that exploitation, and the more we can change the industry where it's more equitable. And I hope if people take a message, it will be that, it's absolutely pursue your artistic career, but not in isolation from your business career and just your personal well-being. And then finally, supporting the careers and the well-being of everybody else in the business, because we all move forward together. And don't ever let the industry tell you the opposite.
That is so true. Well, thank you so much, Mr. John Byrne, the always working actor, 101 Ways to Stay Inspired, Prepared, and Motivated Between Jobs. The link to your work and to some of the pop cultural references we made are in the chat for those who are watching. And I would say, I highly recommend the book. Go out and get it. I'm going to turn it over to Gwinnett Library.
Thank you. Thank you both. And, to learn more about Dr. Nsenga Burton and her work, there are links to the Burton Wire there as well. This has been a very entertaining pairing. You both have been amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.